Hi, welcome. We are so excited for tonight's training on non-compliance. This is a conversation that y'all have been asking for, so we are answering with some incredible partners. So welcome, thank you for being here, and we are so excited to get this conversation moving. We're going to let people take their time to filter in because we know it's been a long day for everybody. So make sure you're checking in with us. Say hi in the chat. The chat is a community place. Be excellent to each other. Operate from a place of curiosity. Ask questions, and we will try to answer them at the end of the conversation. But also, we are heavy-handed on the banhammer because we want the chat to be a place for community. So if you are being abusive, if you are spamming the chat, if you are making the chat otherwise hostile or unusable for other people, you're going to be blocked, banned, unable to leave more comments. So be good to each other. So let us know where you're coming from and what you are hoping to learn from today's call. We're really excited to have you all. Keep in mind, we do have some community guidelines. We want you all, again, to be excellent to each other. So assume each other's best intentions. Be kind to each other. Come from a place of curiosity. If there is something you think needs clarification from somebody else, you're welcome to, have some back and forth in the comments with questions. Be kind to each other again. And make sure, I like this, be non-heinous to each other. That's about it, yeah. It's the Will Wheaton approach to, being a good person, right? So let us know again where you're coming from, what you're hoping to learn from today's call. Again, we are happy to answer questions. So make sure you're dropping your questions in the chat. They may not be answered in real time, but we are going to star questions for ourselves. We're going to set them aside and make sure that we answer as many as we can at the end of the session. So stay tuned. If you can't stay tuned for the whole thing, it is a longer session tonight because this is a training. So you'll be able to catch this all tomorrow on YouTube. This will live on our YouTube channel under the live tab. So again, if you can't stay with us for the whole thing, but you have a question, try to catch it tomorrow on YouTube. Final piece of housekeeping, if you need closed captioning to be able to fully participate in and take in tonight's session, we recommend joining from Facebook because Facebook has caught up with ensuring that there are captions for live video. So if you need captions for accessibility, we highly recommend joining us on Facebook. Seems like that is it for us as we get ready to get started. So we're really excited to have some great presenters tonight, and I am so happy to hand it over to our team.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We'll kick it over to you. You want me to kick it over to you, Latanya, to start us off, say hello, and then I'll close us out here.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, from wherever you are. My name is Latanya Lane. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a trainer with People's Action, and tonight I'm here with you from Freedom Trainers, and I will kick it to Una.
Hi, everybody. Una Chatterjee from dialing in today from Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia. And I'm here with an exciting parent and caregiver-led campaign to save K-12 public education called freethefuture.net. Very happy to be here with you. My pronouns are she and her.
Thank you, Una. And hey, y'all, my name is Akib Yakub. I use he, him pronouns. I am one of the token men that they allow in a women's march. I'm joking. I'm calling in from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm normally in Houston, Texas, but I'm from New York, all over the place. But it's wonderful to be here, and I'm excited to share space, Una and Latanya, with you both. Tonight, we'll walk through feminist non-compliance. What does it mean? How do we escalate? How do we take this work to the next level? I'll do a little bit of housekeeping to kick us off, and a little bit of a grounding before we jump into convo. I want to remind folks before I start to have this conversation, though, that we're going to talk about some things that are potentially disruptive. And I want folks to be mindful of where you are, right? Your whole self, your politics, your identity, the loved ones in your life, and make informed decisions that are best for you, right? We're here about radical consent, and we want you to know all that you can know so you can make the best decisions, so we can build the future that we all deserve and we all want, and the America that is for all of us. Sweet. So to jump in, a lot of folks have been talking about non-compliance, and we want to share a little bit what that means. When laws are unjust, right? When people are doing the things and saying we have to do the things that we don't want to do, we do what we do best, which is disobey. Resistance is not only for the famous and brave people in history. Resistance is actually made up of millions of ordinary choices we make every single day. It's a choice when we say no more, we're saying no more, whether that's quiet, whether it's imperfect, we're saying no more to unjust laws in our daily lives. That looks like teachers teaching books that are being banned. It looks like restaurant workers saying, oops, sorry, the power is out, the kitchen's closed when ICE agents show up to their doors. It might look like you're canceling your Hulu subscription when Disney Plus complies with fascist. It might look like the IT staff at your university refusing to give up the name of student activist. It might look like protesters, and I saw somebody in the chat earlier today dressing up like a frog in a big bubbly outfit to an ICE publicity stunt in your community in Portland. So disruption and noncompliance takes many different forms. And tonight we're going to jump a little bit into what that looks like, how to pull it apart, and how we as everyday folk across this country can play our part. Yeah? Before we do, it's going to be potentially a heavyish convo, and I want us to be a little grounded before we jump in. So if you are wherever you are, I'm doing this to you as you speak. Wherever you are, let's take a second. Find ground. Find something firm under you, under your feet. If you can, plant those feet down. If you're comfortable and you can, close your eyes. If not, keep looking at me. We're pretty on the screen, I promise. Take a deep breath in. And release it out. Feel the bottoms of your feet touching the ground, touching the bed, the couch, wherever you are. Take a deep breath in and have your attention travel up your legs towards your knees, towards your hips. Take another deep breath in, fill your belly up. And release it out as your attention travels up your body to your shoulders. Give your shoulders a little wiggle. Shake it out. Take your attention down to your arms. Feel your wrists. Maybe you turn them around a little bit. Feel your fingertips. Wiggle them out. Now take a deep breath in and really feel it fill up your head. Hold it in for a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Take a little bit more air if you can. Shake it out. Okay. We want to talk about disobeying. We're going to talk about non-compliant. We're going to talk about the rules that we're just not going to follow because the fascists tell us to follow them. And with that, we're going to jump all the way in.
Okay, so hopefully you feel welcome. I feel grounded and grateful for this. We thought it would be helpful in this conversation to just start off with a couple of key terms and just reflecting on the moment that we're in, because there's a lot that's happening right now and it's easy to get confused and lost in it. So we're just going to start by kind of orienting and understanding like the moment and the threat. And two terms that are used quite a bit right now in this moment are first democracy, right? Like probably folks have heard people say we need to defend our democracy. Democracy is under attack, which is true. And one of the things that I've heard as I've been training folks is like, well, what do we mean when we say democracy? Like, what are we fighting for exactly? I kind of get the idea, but what are we actually talking about? So when we talk about democracy in these conversations, we're talking about big D democracy, right? Like all of our institutions that let us participate in our government, and also little D democracy, right? All the decisions that we get to make that let us say what happens in our schools that make sure kids have safe places to play and ways to learn and grow, that we know our elders are safe, that we know we have opportunities and can like live a full life. So when we talk about democracy, we're really talking about government for the people, that's by the people, right? Big D democracy, little D democracy. Another term that's been thrown about quite a bit is authoritarianism. So you might have heard fascist, oligarchs, techno-fascist. Like I feel like there's a lot of words that are describing this moment, and there are tons of spaces where you can go dig deep and go down the rabbit hole of like, how do we define this moment explicitly? Mostly in this conversation, we're going to use the word authoritarianism, and when we use that word, what we mean is government for the few at the expense of the many. So a few people benefit from the suffering of a lot of folks. And we use that word because there are some folks who studied authoritarianism across the globe, and they've noticed that authoritarians actually use democratic institutions like an election to come to power. And then when they come to power, they use those same democratic institutions that elected them to that position to erode the norms and practices from within. So that's something that we're seeing right now. And while it might feel chaotic and unprecedented, this is actually a pattern that authoritarians use all across the globe. So we know that Trump has said that he plans to act like other authoritarians, that we've seen moments in this current, that we've seen things in this current moment that looks like other authoritarians. And we just wanted to kind of make plain the 6 practices that authoritarians across the globe use, and then identify moments that we've seen in the US that show that authoritarian rise and consolidation of power is the moment that we're in. So just basically, what do authoritarians do when they come to power? One of the first things that they like to do is direct investigations against critics. So retribution is something that this current president has talked about quite a bit from his campaign to this current moment. The Department of Justice has been used to go after folks that he's deemed are enemies or bad actors. We've seen probably what was meant to be a private message as a public social post saying that it's embarrassing that people who have criticized this current government haven't faced penalties, haven't been gone after, right? So directing investigations against critics is something that we're definitely seeing. And if you have seen moments where there are investigations against critics and want to drop those examples into the chat, we would love to see them.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here. I think people definitely have examples that you've seen of this next one, deploy military domestically. So as we know, so drop yours in the chat if you've seen this, and we'll all resonate with what you put in. But the National Guard has been deployed in Los Angeles, in DC. It's on its way to Memphis, Chicago, Portland. And the orders are making their way through the courts. We're expecting arrivals of National Guard troops in many other places, many other cities in the country. My friends in New Orleans told me the governor of Louisiana requested deployment of National Guard to Louisiana. He's a big Trump supporter, obviously. A central hallmark of American democracy has always been that the U.S. military not be used against American citizens. But Trump plans to abuse the Insurrection Act to order military force to quash dissent and target vulnerable communities. The next one So we have up next pardons to give license to law breaking. So Trump leverages his pardon power and simply condones law breaking. So he tries to silence people. He supports inciters of political violence. Think about the January 6th pardons that he issued and the folks that he welcomed into the White House shortly after his inauguration. He himself, obviously, has been convicted, and he incentivizes law breaking for his benefit. Those of us from New York City, with our mayor, Eric Adams, know this story. In essence, as he does this, he renders himself above the law. So it's the third typical behavior of authoritarians. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Akib to take us into a couple others.
You got it. Surprise, surprise. Federal law enforcement overreach. Have you seen this? We've been seeing this left and right, from ICE agents being deployed in Chicago and LA and Portland, from folks jumping out of Black Hawk helicopters and pulling kids out of their beds at night. This administration has began to test and experiment with using federal law enforcement to police our cities and shut down lawful everyday folk, lawful protest, lawful dissent, shut down folks living their everyday life in the U.S. That's there and it's here. The next one, of course, is regulatory retaliation. We're also seeing this left and right across the country. James Comey, Letitia James, John Bolton's indictments are all expected and is part of this growing trend. Trump and his goons are using the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies, and at the same time using federal appointments and other powers that they have to reward political loyalty. Right. So we're right now. These are 6 patterns. We're already at 5, and I'll throw it over to Latanya to bring us home with number 6.
Yeah. So we've seen all of these that Akib and Una have shared. Like, we've seen the direct investigations against critics, the military deployed domestically, giving license to law breaking, federal law enforcement overreach, and regulatory retaliation. Like, we have examples of all of those. And the only one we haven't seen completely, we've seen efforts, right, is that the autocrat won't leave, right? So we have January 6th, where Trump inspired a group of folks to try to overturn a fair and free election. And we've heard in his campaign and even currently, right? Like, we won't have elections in 2028, or I'll have a third term, or you'll never have to vote again. So this is another example of him testing the waters. And it's also another example of how he's following the playbook that authoritarians across the globe have followed in order to overthrow a democracy and make it into an authoritarian regime. So one of the things that I tend to like, we've all kind of done this training, Una, Akib, and I, in multiple places, and I think sometimes I forget how big it is to say that, right? Like, how it can really sit in your body in really uncomfortable ways. So I just want to invite folks to take a hold of the tool Akib gave us to even just open this conversation, right? It's a big statement to say we are living in authoritarian times. And so I want to invite you to put your feet on the ground and take a deep breath as I remind us that this actually is not the first authoritarian moment in United States history. And if you are in this live conference call or live stream, it is likely because you are from traditions of resistance that have made democracy possible in this country. Yeah. Like, we know there are women and queer folks and Black folks and brown folks who have been fighting for a democratic process and life in this country since its inception. So we're in a rough moment. We're in a moment of authoritarian breakthrough, where an authoritarian is trying to consolidate his power. And also, our ancestors are with us in this moment. We have been here before. And if they have a playbook about how to rise to power, we actually also have a playbook too. We have a playbook that comes from our history and also from around the globe, where people have successfully resisted authoritarians in countries like Hungary, Serbia, all over the globe where authoritarians have tried to rule. There has been a resistance movement that has been able to successfully break through. So we want to talk a little bit about what that means, right? Our task isn't easy, but it is a little simple, right? So our goals when we notice this authoritarian breakthrough, it's just 3 parts. Very simple, not so easy. We want to slow it, we want to stop it, we want to reverse it. So when we talk about non-compliance and non-cooperation, that's what we're moving towards: slowing it, stopping it, reversing it. And it feels useful to say at this point that when we talk about reversing it, we know that the democracy that we had before was not necessarily working for many people, right? Many people. I'm in Chicago, and South Shore is the community where ICE came in with helicopters and took kids out of their beds and zip tied them in the middle of the night. And the building that they chose was one that they thought was vulnerable, right? Because it was in a poor neighborhood. And they thought that, maybe people wouldn't care about the folks in this neighborhood because they're living in a poor conditions. And so we're not trying to return to a democracy where folks live in those conditions. We want to build a better democracy where folks from the South Shore community that got raided are included in making decisions about how their community looks and making decisions about what they have access to. And the thing is, when we resist, in order to win, we have to get so many folks involved so that when we build the democracy, what we build after involves so many more folks than maybe were involved in the democracy before. So that reverse is not back to previous conditions, because that wasn't doing enough for us anyway. It's to a new and brighter future that we build with the folks that we learn to resist with. So we're going to talk a little bit about some examples of what it looks like to resist. I'm going to pass it to Una. Or no, Akib.
Yeah. And we'll start a little bit with the things that we know. And look, y'all all came through here from an email or a text message or a message from a friend who's connected to Women's March. Y'all are marchers. We march. We've been taken to the street. And we know one thing I want to correct right now is that the media largely has been underreporting the resistance, the marches, the protesting, the folks standing up and raising their hands across the country. A lot of them are capitulating to the administration and giving in. And we just wanted, with some research done by our friends out the Erica Chenowitz and Maria, I'm blanking on
Maria Stefan,
right? Maria Stefan, right? Looking at protest the last couple of months, the last couple of years in the U.S., right? We kicked off January 2017, massive women's marches in every single continent across the planet. 2017 kept off a slow and steady burn. 2025, in contrast, is the blue line. You'll see the vast majority and a large amount of protests that are happening all over the country, everywhere. And we can't forget that. And we need these protests. We need the resistance in the streets. We need folks doing all the things that they're doing in the different angles. And we need different tactics alongside those, looking at the different pressure points that our system relies on for authoritarianism to thrive. So next I'm going to go through a few more examples of what the protesting might have looked like, and then we'll land into some of those different pressure points, right? March 4th of this year, as folks showed up to protect our kids. April 5th, millions of us turned up in DC and across the nation to say, hands off America, hands off our bodies, hands off our futures. We saw folks rise up in International Workers' Day across the country, from Arizona in the Sun Belt with some really beautiful organizing happening down there to Maine. We saw beautifully on June 14th, people coming together for No Kings, for Kick Out the Clowns, rallying millions of people in almost every single city across the country. We saw on June 14th, the same day, when Donald Trump is trying to throw himself a military dictator-style birthday party, we saw our great partners, and next slide, at About Face, putting their bodies on the line and escalating. We had dozens of veterans show up to the birthday parade and got arrested, saying no more. We're not allowing this to happen, not in our names, not for our future, not for our country. So these are all tactics that we have been moving. The authoritarians know this, and right now we're in a place where we're going to give you some tools and skills to elevate and add to your tool belt of tactics for resistance.
Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot the next big one because I'm seeing it in the chats already, and we added it here. And this weekend, y'all, we have right now over 2,200 No Kings actions across the country. Check your their email is going out again tomorrow. nokings.com for more information. Find an action, show up. We need folks in the streets in addition to escalating at different points throughout your daily lives. And now we'll kick it over to some of the frameworks.
Yeah. So protest is so important in this moment. Every time folks go out to the streets, it's another way that authoritarians say, hey, maybe not everyone is on our side. Maybe there are some folks who disagree with us. So that's like a way to publicly join with other folks and to resist. But there are other ways that we can do that in our daily lives, right? Like, so after the protest, what does it look like to resist in your everyday life at work, when you're picking the kids up from school, when you are talking with a new client, when you are just out in the streets? What are the ways that you can orient yourself to this moment so that you can live in resistance to injustice when it confronts you? So one of the tools that we want to talk about is non-cooperation or non-compliance. So like I said before, authoritarians have a playbook and we the people have a playbook. And our playbook is non-cooperation. That's what we've seen across the globe. Folks who research this have seen when people have been able to overthrow an authoritarian regime, it's because of nonviolent non-cooperation. And there's a reason that non-cooperation beats authoritarianism. One of the first ways is this quote. I want to start with this quote by Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple, which is an amazing book and movie and play. And she says the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And that is one of the key tools authoritarians use to get people to comply when they ask, and sometimes comply even before they ask, right? Is to say, you are powerless against my authority, against my will. You need to comply. But we all have moments in our lives where we saw something wrong happening and we didn't comply. We said no. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to just take a minute or two and reflect on a time you didn't give up your power. Or what's a time when you've said no? Someone asked you to do something, you knew it wasn't right. You said no. I'm going to pause for like 90 seconds. You can drop it in the chat. You can journal it. But yeah, when's the time you said no or didn't give up your power? Yeah. So I feel like I see some whistleblowing in the chat. Refuse to work for a sexist boss. Making sure kids have time after school to just enjoy their play instead of being inundated with homework. Standing up for a gay friend who was mocked. Stop giving donations to a parish. Iraq protests, Women's March, right? Yeah. Please keep them coming in, right? Because courage is contagious. Seeing all these examples, these are things that you can pull from when it gets hard. Practicing non-cooperation can feel like kind of weird in your body. We're used to saying yes, we're used to complying. So sharing these stories with yourself, with each other is really important and powerful. And it's a key tool that folks around the globe have used to resist authoritarian regimes. So we're going to see some examples that are maybe similar to yours, and maybe will inspire you. And we're going to hear from Una about ways that people have resisted and not given up their power and said no.
Thank you, Latanya. So non-cooperation is really, it's like surprising people by doing something that you weren't expected to do, doing the unexpected, being a citizen in a different way, being a neighbor in a different way, being a community member in a different way. And I'll share with you some examples of 3 buckets within which non-cooperative behavior can happen. Maybe it'll give you some ideas of something you can do, something you can inspire someone else to do, something you can inspire the mayor of your town or the principal of your school to do. So the first one you'll see here, examples of speaking. The first one on this slide is very memorable. Marianne Boudet, who gave an amazing sermon with Trump sitting in the congregation that really contradicted fundamentally the values on which he ran and on which he was elected, and begged him to be a human being and stand for a country that was inclusive and humane. You can see that sort of like an anonymous example, just if you have skills and knowledge, like you know how to organize a protest, you know how an aspect of history that you think people could benefit from learning, and you find an opportunity to share it or train people on it. And then small groups and larger groups, or small groups and institutions. There's some examples here. Naval Academy alumni signing a letter rejecting censorship at the Academy, and the NIH scientists Bethesda Declaration, which was a coordinated institutional denunciation of harmful federal decisions. So you may be a part of influential networks like this. You may also be a part of networks that are important in your community or your professional community. So you can think about ways that your speech could actually be surprising and non-cooperative. On the next slide, we have examples of acting. So you'll see like people leave their position because the institution they work for is doing something in a way that demonstrates complicity with the regime that's in power right now. Or in small groups, just doing their work really slow, not fully complying with instructions. And on behalf of institutions, we actually saw something that I think surprised many of us, and many of you might have been a part of it, the Tesla takedowns and consumer action on Tesla caused Tesla stockholders to call Elon Musk back from his Doge job. That was a serious people's victory, maybe one of the most significant we've had under this regime to date. And then the example of the Washington Post columnist is listed here. And then, so that's speaking, acting, and then there's a third category of surprising non-cooperative behavior, which is basically standing in the way, examples of standing in the way. And we've seen some of these already. But some of them, they may not have come very much to the public light, but there are numerous examples that people have reported of federal workers who have quietly slowed work or sabotaged orders. And then small groups, we've seen even not so small groups, especially like examples in Los Angeles. Most recently, I've loved I've been really inspired by the No Sleep for ICE protests, where people are out all night making noise in front of hotels and making it impossible for the ICE agents who were lodged inside to get a good night's sleep. And then on behalf of institutions, like, is there an opportunity to pressure an institution you're a part of to resist dismantling DEI programs, or even declare that they won't dismantle DEI programs affirmatively? So these are 3 buckets. It's some initial food for thought. We're going to keep talking, but keep that percolating in your mind as we continue the conversation.
Yeah, those are great examples, Una. And the reason that they work is because of how power actually works, right? Like, so we're taught to think that power works like in this little triangle, like on the left of my screen. Right? So the super stable base, and it just will stand forever like a pyramid in Egypt. And at the top of that pyramid is the dictator, or the person in power, right? That's how we're taught power works. How power actually works is a lot more like this image on the right, where it's an upside down triangle. And with it, just it's so unstable. It wants to fall to one side or the other. And the only way that it stays upright is if you put something, perhaps a pillar, to the side of it to keep it stable. So the person on top is the person in power, but it's actually a really unstable proposition. And so and the reason that power works that way is because power holders can't actually get what they want alone, right? Like, we understand this as people who move collectively. Like, nobody does anything by themselves. The same is true of power. Power holders can't get what they want alone. They need other people and institutions to support them. Otherwise, their power becomes really shaky, like that upside down pyramid. And the pillars that are holding up this pyramid are actually an example of pillars that hold up an authoritarian rule. They can include governments, media, shareholders, and policymakers. We call this pillars of support. And non-cooperation is what we use to actually pull those pillars down, right? Non-cooperation, the examples that Una gave, are acts where we refuse to cooperate or comply with requests, demands, or orders. If you have enough non-cooperation in a pillar, it will completely defect, or it'll be unreliable, and the autocrat can't rule in the way that they want to.
These are. Is this me now? What's on?
Yeah, this is you.
Right. These people are like, if we were to look at the current fascist Trump administration, and you want to look at the different pieces, the different pillars that make up that administration or uphold that power, we can break it down into civil service, into the police and military, into media, into faith communities, into labor, and into the business community. These are some broad strokes. We know there are so many more, right? But I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, and I want you all to keep visualizing that image LaTanya laid out for us of that upside down triangle being held up by these pillars. And it's beautiful to think of these pillars as strong, concrete things, right? That ancient ruins are made of. I was going to go into that metaphor, I won't. But these pillars are nothing more than everyday folks. If you can go to the next slide, please, right? If you look at inside of these pillars, it's people. It's all of us. At Women's March, we are a base of at least 8 million people across the United States. We are these folks. We raise these folks. We go to school with these folks. We go to work with these folks. We are the people, and we live at every single level of these pillars. And if we, in our everyday decision, refuse to comply, if we say no, and I saw somebody said no is a full sentence in the comment. No is a full sentence. If you say no and you disrupt, you disobey, we are able to actually have these pillars start to deflect just through people power. Enough non-corporations will cause these pillars to completely deflect and be unreliable for the autocrats to complete their aims. And to really, this is very conceptual. in so many ways. And I want us to go a little deeper dive and look at a campaign where some folks have designed a pillar-based strategy to win. I'm going to turn it over to Una to talk us through what this can look like.
So I have to pause for a second and say, like, the ideas that are coming in through the chat are just amazing. Like, you all are already thinking about ways to shake the pillars that have the billionaires in the middle,
Yes.
do very ambitious things, praising something small like a gay pride flag at an elementary school, that's flying at an elementary school in your community. So I think all of those things, like what you're doing, is what is going to make it work. And what I'm going to share is just the beginning of some work that a group of parents, caregivers, organizers for education equity and education justice have put together to try to think about how we can move stakeholders in K through 12 public education to shake our pillar. So what you're looking at right now is our assessment of what we think our pillar looks like. So we have maybe elected leaders and boards of education in the middle of it, commissioner of education and board of education at a high level, district leaders, school committees, educators and school staff. Somewhere closer to you is your superintendent, even closer are school administrators, and then we're out here, students and families. And this is a pillar which is within, it's a slice or it's a mini pillar within the big education pillar that has like Harvard in it, and cultural institutions are often grouped in that pillar. But this is the one that we're going to focus on and we're going to shake. And the reason that I feel like I want to share that with you is because that's not that small. That's like 15 million families. That's 80% of the students in K through 12 education in the country are in traditional public schools. So it's a lot of us. And if some of us start in each of these, it's going to add up, but we have to give people a place to start. So we're starting here. And I'll tell you a little bit about the campaign that we are launching. As an example, also please join us, but also as an example for you, in case you have a sector or a neighborhood where you could start something similar. So let's look at the next slide. So our campaign is called Free the Future. Basically, our aim is to strengthen to protect our schools, to defend public education, and to strengthen our democracy. We don't think that we can do one without working on the other. Next slide. Tens of thousands of people in this country care about public schools and democracy and care enough that they will take action to defend them. We don't think public schools are perfect. We are working to perfect them, and we're working to defend them because we think that they hold a special kind of promise for our democracy. So we have 4 components to our program. We have to engage as many people as we can. For many, many families, schools are a place, it's the first place where they contend with institutional power or state power having direct impact on their families. So it's a place where we might be able to get them to take action. It's also a place that people find community. It's often embedded in a community, and you see the same people every day or at every parent-teacher night. So it's an easy place to find community. So we want to engage more people, make it possible for as many people to on-ramp onto this campaign as possible, train leaders so that we can create communities of action in schools and get to the point where we can mobilize big, all around the idea of saying no. And we might not know exactly how to topple the regime, but we know that if we create these communities of action, school by school, town by town, state by state, and we habituate our folks to say no. No, saying no is not only normal, it is not only appropriate, it is necessary, it's something we're all doing. If we habituate people to saying no and taking action around no, we are going to get to the point where we're going to be able to do what's necessary to topple the regime. Next slide. So this is our on-ramp. And when I said that people need kind of accessible on-ramps, this is like a on-ramp that anyone can take. And basically, it's a non-permission slip. And And if you go to our website, you can read the bullets much more easily probably than on the slide in the webinar. So you can go to freethefuture.net. But it shares our principles. We're against diverting public funds to private education. We're against limiting access to education for students with disabilities. We want to make sure that we don't lose protections for the most vulnerable students, including Black students, POC students, immigrant students. We don't want them to share student data, because you know what happens when they start sharing our data, and they want our kids' data now. So these are the principles that we have that tell us, like, around what are we going to take action. And it's a non-permission slip, so it's a little cheeky. And what we want to do is get everybody to get every person in their school to sign it, and allow leaders to then build school chapters with it who can take action. Next slide. Who should sign it? Everyone. You should sign it. You should go right now and sign it. So by starting scaling in that way and then supporting leaders to take action, we hope that this is going to be a contribution to the non-cooperation movement in the country. And we hope a lot of people not only join us, but create this type of a campaign with these type of on-ramps for your neighbors in the places that you're active. And I think we have one more slide to kind of emphasize how this could add up, or why it matters.
Yeah, I think when we, like, Una, thank you for your story and for that example. And folks definitely should go to freethefuture.net. Is that where they can sign the non-permission slip?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, freethefuture.net. So yeah, like Una said, it's like bit by bit, we move towards this larger mass moment, right? Like, folks, I've seen a couple questions in the chat about why hasn't Target moved yet? Like, when we've been protesting so much, when does it like actually kick in? When do we start seeing results? So one of the things that we talk about when we talk about non-cooperation is sustained non-cooperation, right? So when we are doing this work, we're doing this work in what are anti-democratic conditions. And the way organizing works in anti-democratic conditions is that the folks who are in charge of things are not folks who are going to be shamed into agreeing with us. They're not going to be embarrassed into agreeing with us. We're going to have to impose costs through nonviolent non-cooperation. So until they fill it in their pocketbook, until they fill it at the polls, they're not inclined to do what we're asking them to do, right? So Target isn't moving because they haven't seen enough resistance yet. There's been a bunch of resistance, and we need a bunch more, and we need to keep at it, right? Like, people like to talk about the Montgomery bus boycott as like a moment that Rosa Parks sat down, people didn't ride the bus for a little bit, and then bada bing, bada boom, they got to sit on the seats. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted for 381 days. 381 days of people walking miles to and from work, of people dealing with harassment and threats of violence from the Klan and from other folks who were trying to get folks in line, of people having to like do some mutual aid around childcare, around lunch breaks. It was a community that came together bit by bit by bit until the whole community just shut it down. And the Montgomery bus system just could not sustain it. They only felt the hurt of it, right? And on that 382nd day, they said, well, we have to talk to you because you've ruined everything. And that's what we're trying to do, ruin everything for this regime for long enough and deeply enough that it has a real impact. So the work you are doing matters, and we're going to have to just do that work for a long time until they feel it and they start acting differently. So, but it has an impact, right? Even the little things we do have an impact. And it's not just Una and Akib and I who are saying that. We have physics on our side. We're going to show you a little video about what we've been talking about this whole time.
Everybody knows about playing with dominoes, but what you may not know is that a domino can knock over another domino, which is about 1.5 times larger. So what I have here is a chain of dominoes. Each one is 1.5 times larger than the previous one. And the smallest domino is about 5 millimeters high and 1 millimeter thick. And I will carefully place it. And there are 13 dominoes. And the largest domino, it weighs about 100 pounds and is more than a meter tall. Ready? Boom.
Every time. Boom. It's so good every time. So yeah, we are taking like tiny actions, and the actions we feel like might feel small, but what you do inspires other folks. It keeps you inspired in this fight. And we know that courage is contagious, right? So go stand close, no 6 feet apart where courage is concerned. Pass it on, right? Like take the axe, do the things, don't comply. That is the thing that is going to get us out of this moment. And they will tell you it doesn't matter. They will tell you it is not working. That's usually when it is. So keep resisting, keep not cooperating, keep being courageous. Let's answer some questions, I guess. Akib, I'm gonna kick it to you.
Amazing. Thank you, Latanya. Thank you, Una. Sweet. Y'all, use the chats. Type questions in there. Risa is on the back end flagging the questions for us. And we'll do our best to answer. We got some time together. And we'll jump in. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Una.
One person was asking how to find a march this weekend near them. That seems like a good one to answer.
Yes, I will say the nokings.org. Nokings.org. There's a map that'll come up. You type in your zip code and you will find an action near you. Nokings.org. And if you're on the Women's March mailing list, you got an email earlier in the week, and you'll get another one tomorrow on that link as well. Great. I see one from our friend Clayton. What does the frog symbolize? I mentioned the frog earlier in Portland. Some folks dressing up with inflatable frogs, inflatable unicorns, inflatable chickens to these protests. And it comes out and it really plays on a tactic of ridicule, right? Fascist authoritarians rely on us thinking and seeing them as strongmen. They're relying on fake news and fake information that our cities are dangerous and unsafe. And our folks, residents, are showing up super unserious. Yes. And confronting these fascists in their face, saying, I'm here in a frog costume. I'm here dressed like a unicorn. I am not dangerous. I am unafraid. And really using ridicule to diffuse the moment and inject another form of nonviolence, noncompliance, and resistance. Anything to add, Franz?
I know, be froggy, be silly like Portland. I've been loving it.
Be froggy. Okay, let's see. Okay, this question is coming in from Nicola. We know what's authoritarianism. How can we take action?
Yeah. I mean, non-cooperation, right? Sustained collective non-cooperation. So find your folks, right? Like that may be part of an organization. It might be a book club that you're part of. It might be, but right, like these actions that we take. So like I said, I'm in Chicago. And we've been having calls with folks in DC. We've been having calls with folks in LA as our cities are kind of facing similar situations. One interesting thing that came up in those calls is that when people, they've started picking up protesters, but not in groups of 5 or 6, right? In groups of 1 or 2, yes. In groups of 5 or 6, no. So I just think those things that we know in our bones, that there's power in numbers, there's power in moving collectively, that's true in many instances, right? In terms of keeping our safety when we're moving out in the streets, and also when we are taking action. So if we're gonna if we're going to push back on this thing, it can't just be one or two people. That's important to us individually and courageously, but to like actually have impact, we need to figure out how can we move collectively? What's the thing that people are willing to join? How do we feed that fire and help it grow?
I think it's also like you have to take responsibility for your own safety. You know, they are making it unsafe quite intentionally. So keep an eye on things. Bigger groups like Latanya, you just shared, I think is a great idea. Working with organizations is a great idea. But think of something simple that you could do. Could you get 20 people together to do a read-in with some kids about from the list of all the children's books that are currently banned in Texas? Could you do that at your public library and call the local media? That might not seem like you've toppled a pillar, but you've created a group of 20 people who are going to want to do the next thing together. So in addition to going to the march on the weekend, think about some of those ways you can bring people in who haven't yet gone to their first march.
I love that. And I would also say, like, on an individual level, right? Assess your risks, as folks have shared. But on a one-on-one level, if you are a teacher and your superintendents are saying don't teach these books,
Yeah.
Maybe the books aren't in a classroom when they come, right? If you are a clerk and you're a clerk in a firm that is stamping the orders for things to happen that hurt our communities, maybe you lose the stamp and you have to wait 2 weeks for the next one to come special order. Right. There are many different ways you can also take individual action. And one of the things the seeds we're hoping to plant tonight is to take a good assessment of where you stand in your own life. Who are the people that you talk to? And what are those individual actions you can also do to chip away at those pillars?
I love that so much. Like, I think, yeah, sometimes that Alice Walker quote, like sometimes we give away our power because we're like, it has to be this big action. And I know I tend to err on the side of like big action. But yeah, like the stamp is in need of repairs for 2 weeks, or oh, I lost that email. Let me go find it in my, Filodex, or whatever they're called. Right. Like, but there's sometimes I think people struggle with like, should I resign from this evil regime or should I stay? Like, that's up to each person who's standing in the way, but there are ways to live in line with your values, whether you stay or go, and there's tons of ways you can throw sand in the gears if you're present in a system. America is like home to slowdowns and work stoppages and like, oh no, I just don't remember how to do my job, right? Like and that's been a good way for us to get some really great wins in labor and civil rights. And who knows what we can win in these conditions where everything seems so hard.
One of our colleagues, Nadine, says all the time, it's easy to get fired for insubordination. It's easy to get fired for breaking the rules and not doing your job. It's very difficult to get fired for doing your job badly.
Yeah.
Maybe this is an invitation and some permission to, if you are in one of these pillars that's causing harm, maybe this is an invitation to do your job badly and see where that goes, right? And I think that's another really beautiful way to take action. Okay, I see another question from Terry. How about non-compliance actions for those of us who aren't parents or associated with schools?
Yeah, I think that there are many folks who have are leading from within the immigrant justice movement, longstanding immigrant justice organizations, and new allies who are showing up to deportation court and doing work that's called protective presence, which is not necessarily what you see covered often on the news, where people are actually putting their bodies between ICE agents and folks who are coming out of hearings. That work is incredibly valuable, and we're appreciative to the people who are doing it. But even just showing up to bear witness to ICE actions where you see ICE being deployed. I know the National Day Laborers Organization has a campaign called Adopt a Corner, where you can figure out where ICE is showing up on different corners in your community and commit to being there to watch the activity for a certain amount of time each day. So because immigrants are so on the front line of attack, I think folks who care about immigrants and immigrants themselves have been offering people opportunities to do non-cooperation behavior that's supportive. And I think that really now is a time when we need people to invent. So think about, like, maybe you're good at thinking about tactics, or you have a friend who is. Non-cooperation could be as small as coming up with really funny t-shirts. Like, I want someone to make a t-shirt that says "Make America Smart Again, Defend Our Public Schools," and then giving it away to everyone. It could be just something like that. So, like, buttons, stickers, think about all of that.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like, just to build off of what you said, Una, I think like also building the world, right? Like, what are the alternative systems that we need to see, right? So, again, this is not the first time our country has seen anti-democratic conditions. In Mississippi, when they had elections, but it was clear that those elections were not fair nor free, they created the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. I might be mixing up that name, but right, they created a whole different party and a whole alternative election structure to say, like, this is what we want. This isn't what we have, but this is what we want, where everyone gets to vote and everyone's vote is counted and matters, right? And it was meaningful to the people who participated, and it like also gave inspiration for the voting structures that came after. So we need so like there's a thing of resisting this current regime, but also building that alternative strategy. Like, you've probably seen an alternative system in the mutual aid networks that you're a part of. There's all sorts of world building that needs to be done right now.
Amazing. Thank you both. I'm going to add a question here from Katie. How do we deal with just the plain brute force and calculated terrorism of anyone who is now seen as an enemy of the state?
Yeah. I feel like we all have an answer to that.
I know.
I mean, I think the frogs and the Victorian tea parties in Portland, right? Like, they feed on fear. And so there's like the show of force, and demonstrating how silly that is helpful, and it like undercuts that force. There is a big conversation in Chicago about nonviolence and why it's strategic and important, right? Like, I always say I'm nonviolent by not by birth, but by training, because we are, we need to build a movement that is big and inviting to more folks than we have right now. We need so many more people to come into this work and to resist this regime. And nonviolent work is a strategic way to do that. And so when we are meeting up with this brutality and this sitting in the face of violence, I think those images that stick in my mind of children on the Children's March being sprayed with water hoses and being sicked by dogs, and remaining nonviolence of those kids at countertops who are being yelled at and having things thrown at them, and they are remaining nonviolent, of the man in Tiananmen Square with his groceries talking to tanks, right? Like, I feel like we had a similar image in LA where someone was kind of talking about, what did you sign up to? Is this protecting and serving, right? Like, those images really sit with the crowd and really make it clear what we're up against and also what we stand for. So we meet the brutality with our values, with our commitments, with our discipline. Yeah, I think that's one thing I would offer. Una, Akib, I'm curious to hear what y'all would say.
Una, you want to go? Yeah. Okay. I also, yes, right? I also invite us to, we know that authoritarianism, that fascists rely on fear, right? As Latanya said. And we know that we live in these massive disinformation machines. And I invite you all, when you hear the narratives and you see the narratives of fear, of scary things happening, right? When folks are saying our neighborhoods are dangerous, right? I actually invite you to take a step back and be like, wait, is this actually a thing? Is this really scary thing actually happening? And if it's not, be the person who steps in and interrupts it. Say,
Yeah.
no, this isn't happening. All right. And do it in a way that's like, I heard what they said, but actually I saw this thing. And point out, poke holes into the logic of those conversations. And let's break this myth of fear, because our neighbors are not scary.
No.
Folks want us to think that folks on the right, folks on the left, folks at the center, folks who don't look like us, who don't think like us, who literally live next door to us, might be scary. And it's in that division that fascism grows, authoritarianism thrives, right? So let's also like question this scary and see if it's actually scary, or if it's just somebody saying it's scary,
Yeah.
right?
Be a
Because
whole
there's
poker.
plenty of scary things out there, right? There's plenty of scary things out there, right? And also, let's do the work to be like, you know what? This is injected fear, right? And this is versus a moment that's need to be met with courage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would only add that there is always something that you can be doing within whatever line is comfortable for you. So push your line, do something a little bit uncomfortable for you. But if in your assessment you want to be safe in a certain way, it is your responsibility to find the thing that you can do from within that space. We heard stories when the people mobilized to overthrow dictatorship in South Korea, that there were people who drove the buses, and there were parents who brought their children, and the bus drivers took care of the children during the protests, and the parents went out and protested and came back, and they were able to do it because they knew someone was watching the kids and that their kids were safe. So figure out what you can do within the lines that you need to draw for yourself or your family.
Sweet. I'm gonna see if we'll take probably one more question or so, unless I see more pop in, right? And then we'll bring it to a close. One question, a theme that I see, and a lot of folks I think on here deal with a lot, is there are so many protests, which is great.
Yeah.
Are they doing anything? How will non-compliance really work? Is it going to do anything? So how would y'all begin to answer that question?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a both and, right? Like protests are important and we need to keep doing them. And alone, they won't be enough to break through to the folks who are benefiting from this authoritarian breakthrough. So it's the showing up in the streets and also doing that everyday slow work of resistance. And those two combined get us to that moment where we need to see where we see the authoritarian unable to actually move, right? Like we show our resistance and then we weaken those pillars, and that's the 1-2 combo that gets us out of this moment.
And also point to I would also add to that question, point to the things that work, right?
Yeah.
We saw Jimmy Kimmel is back in here.
Yes.
We saw people rising up and change happening. We see a lot of the threats that the Trump regime is making actually not being implemented because folks are fighting back and are disruptive. So their protest and our resistance is working,
Yes.
right? And it might not be like Jimmy Kimmel is a beautiful example because it happened in the span of 2 days, 3 days.
3 days. It was
3
wild.
days, right? A lot of the change that we are building and working on, right? The chipping away at these pillars takes time.
Yeah.
Right. It's been a build to get to where we are, and it's going to take a build to get us out of where we are.
Yeah.
I see one last question in here. We mentioned that media is downplaying the resistance. How do we get them to report on it more? Like what was said about the Black Hawk helicopters and the troops rappelling down into a housing complex in Chicago. We didn't see that. I didn't see that. People need to see that. But what are we doing about this?
Are you going to tell us, or are you asking the group?
I'm asking the group. I have some thoughts too, but I'm asking the group.
Yeah. Go ahead, Una. I feel like I've been talking so much.
I mean, I feel like one of the things is we all can make media now like never before in history. So That's why some of us do know about what happened in Chicago that you just described. And I think that the other thing is with traditional media, we have to insist that they tell these stories. So meet with your local papers and meet with the corporations that run all the local papers and the local television, and try to push. I do think that the frog costume, like think about the incredible strategic importance of the frog costume. Nobody can say I'm dangerous, nobody can say I'm scary, and nobody can keep me off your TV. Like it is just extraordinary. So let's just be creative, get our artist friends involved. Someone in the chat noted a really beautiful documentary called A Force More Powerful, which I love. But like almost every movement covered in that documentary had amazing songs and art. And so let's just like get our friends involved who are good at that stuff too. It will be very hard for people to ignore us.
Yeah.
I agree. And like, look, I think we all grew up hearing that history is written by victors. And we're living that literally right now. And how that's playing out in front of us, I think answers the why to this question. Donald Trump has sued almost every single
Yes.
major news publication who dared say the thing that he was doing. They reported on the truth that he's doing X, Y, or Z, and he's like, I'm going to sue you. And these organizations have capitulated. They have paid out millions of dollars, right? And now they're fearful to report. That's a big why. The answers that Una and Latanya shared are like some of the alternatives. Somebody shared in a chat local news and local papers. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's another way. Make sure you are writing into those opinion sections. Make sure we need to recognize collectively that a lot of the folks in our lives are being fed information through algorithmic streams that reinforces the things that we already know and the things we already see. Help to break that. Right? Make sure you're sharing the articles. Make sure you're putting things in front of people. And probably most importantly in this moment especially is make sure you're getting to know your neighbors and talking to your friends and family, right? And the job there isn't to like broadcast these things in their face. They're actually going to turn away from you if you do that. The job is to get to know them, get to love them, get to share time and break bread with them. One of our colleagues said she bought an organizer, so she bought cacti and she knocked on all of her neighbors' doors and she said, hi, and she gave them cactuses and she started a friendship and a relationship. Do those little things so you can actually be in dynamic relationship with folks. So when misinformation spreads, you're able to go and actually be some of the spreaders of good news and correct news and truth.
Yeah. Can I add one thing? Yeah, because I think what you said about people, every newspaper is that fear isn't just the pillars, right? Remind us that we're all people. Like we're all people. The media is not a big thing. It's like folks who are also dealing with the same pressures that we're experiencing and and worried in ways that we're similarly worried. And so those letters to the editor, whether it's like, hey, I appreciated you reporting on this thing that happened in my neighborhood, is really important. And also like showing support, like how do you support the folks who are doing the good work and letting them know that they have support from the collective, right? I will subscribe to your Substack because you're a truth teller. Like I will, right? Like how do we help the folks who are being champions in this moment know that they have the support of enough folks that they can take some risks, right? Like Governor Newsom takes risks because his values are there and also because he knows he has the support of his constituents who are protesting and really aligned with what he's putting out right now. So there's ways that we can let folks who are doing good work know that that we have their back. And there are ways that we can like push on folks who aren't yet doing the right thing to do better, or else there are consequences of sustained non-cooperation.
Amazing. Latanya, Una, thank you both so freaking much for joining us tonight, for sharing your time, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your energies with the folks on this call. For everyone who joined us tonight, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for raising your hand. Thank you for agitating and saying, I'm going to escalate, right? But let's disobey. Risa is going to send an email to everyone who is joined and who was not able to join, a recording of this webinar. We will share more information about the links and the campaigns that we talked about, and some more resources. I saw a few questions around safety this weekend. If you Google Protest Safety Women's March, or we have a training series on the Women's March YouTube page on protest safety and things to keep in mind. And with that, we will see you all in the streets on Saturday. Let's do this thing.
Bye.
We'll bring